Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin. We are on lesson 7 of our Ilmul Akhlaq, or science of morality or ethics. And we are going to start to talk about the topic of justice. So, the importance of justice. It is important now for us to understand. It is important now to understand the importance of the malaka, the quality of justice. As all virtues, all those good attributes that are virtues can be said to stem from this quality of justice. Just as all vices are said to stem from dhulm. Dhulm is oppression, injustice. Now some, they have viewed justice as a malaka that illuminates all other faculties. So you have the faculty of akliya, you have the faculty of shahwiya, you have the faculty of gadabiya. Justice is a malaka that illuminates all these faculties. It lights them up and illuminates them. This quality of justice, this malaka of justice, is a safeguarding against the harms and dangers of deviation. Those deviations towards extremes, no matter if this is in regards to mankind's personal affairs or their social matters. The quality of justice is a safeguarder against those dangers of falling into deviation of extremes in one's personal life and social life, one's personal doings and social doings, one's personal interactions and social interactions. This justice enables mankind to attain felicity. It enables mankind to reach towards the rahmah of Allah, the mercy of Allah, to reach towards the rida of Allah, the contentment of Allah. Allah's thawab, Allah is taking you to a special bestowment. However, one must know that the golden mean to be able to exercise this virtue, the golden mean is that area of balance. I've been talking about, imagine these faculties as a scale. If you have it up too high, one side will be in excess and the other one will be in neglect. Those two are vices. So you balance it out. When it's balanced, that's a moderation. That's called the golden mean. That's the virtue. So one must know that the golden mean to be able to exercise this virtue of justice. And they must be able to know the difference between its excess and how to address it. Maulana Raki, he states that this discrimination is only attained through the teachings of Islam, that if you want to know really the discerning, the discrimination, the distinguishing of Mullah Naraki, says that this discrimination is only attained through the teachings of Islam. So then he talks about some different types of justice. People want justice. Sometimes they misunderstand the details of justice as an application or its definition. But justice is good. So Mullah Naraki, he says there's three types of justice. So he says there's three types of justice. So here let's consider these three types of justice that he mentions. The first is the justice between the human and Allah, the sons and daughters of Adam and Allah, the Exalted. Here there is punishments and rewards which Allah the Exalted bestows on mankind in relation to his or her doings, his or her actions, his or her deeds. So when we commit sins, or when we do good deeds, when we do those righteous deeds, when we do amal salih with correct intentions, we are then entitled, deserving of reward, or if we did it with the wrong things, the wrong intentions, we did those wrong deeds, then if we do those wrong deeds, then we will be deserving of punishment. We will be entitled to it. Like if you ran a race, you're entitled to the trophy at the end. You're entitled to be called the winner if you won. If a person sins, they're entitled to punishment. If a person does good deeds, they do obedience, they do deeds that are acceptable according to Allah, they become entitled, deserving of reward. This is justice. This is justice. Allah is just to his creation. So this is justice. And if it were otherwise, it would imply injustice on the creatures. It would imply injustice to the creatures of Allah the Exalted, which Allah is not unjust. Allah is just. One of our fundamentals of the Shia madhab in theology is that Allah is just. And we defined that and talked about that in Kalam. So here we have two aspects from which we can consider justice in this first type of justice, the justice which is between Bani Adam and Allah. We can consider justice in the sense of theological justice, the topic of the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second way, from the second perspective of justice that we can consider, is humans' justice toward their obedience and beliefs directed to Allah the Exalted. So the second aspect that we can look at it is not from the aspect of Allah's justice upon his creatures, but it's from the aspect of the humans' justice towards Allah. That is, that they give Allah his rights, that they obey Allah, and that they believe in Allah. So the second way that we could look at justice here is from the creature to the creator. In their obedience and beliefs directed to Allah the Exalted. And there's lots of talk that could be held here on these certain things. Like we must be just in how we view Allah. So when I say justice in beliefs, okay, we must have a correct understanding of Allah. We must be putting the beliefs in the right place. And as for our actions, we must be putting them in the right place. We must be obeying Allah. So anyways, it's just brief. The second type of justice is justice among humans, which is related to the fact that every human must honor individual and social rights. Those individual and social rights of the others. And within this, we have the acting according to the rules of Islam. This is what is termed as social justice. How others are treated. How others are treated. No oppression to people. No oppressing. No taking the rights of people. So there's lots of aspects that can be talked about over here in social justice. So that's the second type of justice that he mentions, social justice. Now the third, Mullah Naraki lists, he lists as a third here, justice between the living and the dead. So this is the kind of justice that commands that the living, those who are alive, they should recall the deceased with kindness, pay their debts, and act according to their wills. Pray for them and seek their forgiveness, or perform some charitable acts. And ask you could ask Allah to give the reward of those charitable acts to them. So Mullah Naraki mentions that as a third type of justice. Another way that we could divide justice based on the types of oppression. We could base a division, a classification of justice according to the classification of oppressions. So the first type of justice that we have is justice concerning the rights of Allah. The rights of Allah, the Exalted. Dhulm to the rights of Allah would be oppression to the rights of Allah. That would be injustice to the rights of Allah. Second is justice to the rights of the self. Like dhulm, oppression to the self. Like as example, sin. When we sin, we are doing oppression to the self. And there's some rights mentioned about the self, about certain parts of the self. So here, this is a kind of oppression to the self, sinning. So the second type is justice to the rights of the self. The third type is justice to the rights of other creatures. Justice to others. Oppression is to the rights of other creatures here. So if there's three types of oppression and three types of justice then. We could say there's oppression to the right of Allah. No one can really oppress Allah because nobody has any power over Allah. But this is to the right of Allah. This is going against the right of Allah. It does not harm Allah one bit. Allah is needless as Samad. But this is His rights. And you're responsible to fulfill His rights. So oppression to those rights is injustice. The second type of oppression is oppression to the self. And the third is oppression to others. Then therefore we could say the contrary to oppression is justice. So justice there is in the rights of Allah. The second is the justice to the self. And the third is the justice to the rights of others. Mullah Naraki, he states that justice means that the aql, the intellect, has leadership over all other faculties of the human soul. So the aql becomes the amir of the human soul. Aql becomes the imam of the human soul. So intellect is now the leader of the other faculties in the human soul, like the faculty of shahwiya, the faculty of ghadabiya, the faculty of wahmiya. So that wahmiya, shahwiya, ghadabiya will only act in accordance to what intellect tells it to do. And it will stop where intellect tells it to do. And intellect will submit to Allah the Exalted and realize Allah the Exalted. Intellect knows that Allah exists. Intellect says to obey Allah. So when intellect, when aql has leadership over the other faculties in the human soul, then you have adalat, you have justice. So that all these faculties will then be employed toward the goal of human perfection and felicity, to sa'ada wa bahja. So this is quoted from the translation of Mullah Naraki's book. He says the intellect is the sovereign of the body. If justice prevails within it, it will also prevail in the domain under its jurisdiction. Just as if the ruler of a society is just, justice shall expand throughout the whole society. Whereas if the ruler is unjust, then there will be no justice in that country. So in the same way, you have justice and injustice. And intellect is the sovereign, the leader of those other faculties. So we have in the Holy Quran, we have Inna aladina yakfuruna bi ayati Allahi wa yaktuluna an-nabiina bi ghayri haqqin wa yaktuluna aladina yamuruna bil qisti minan nasi Fabashirhum bi'adhabin alim. Transinterpretation of this noble ayat, Surah 3, ayat 21. Certainly, those who disbelieve in the ayat of Allah and slay the prophets unjustly and slay those among men who enjoin justice, Fabashirhum bi'adhabin alim. Announce to them a painful chastisement. Give to these people the glad tidings of a painful punishment. Give to them the tidings of a painful punishment. Adhabin alim. Bi'adhabin alim. Surah 4, ayat 135. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, kunu kawamina bil qisti, Shuhada'a lillahi. Be maintainers of justice, bearers of witness for Allah. Walau ala anfusikum. Though it may be against your own selves. Awil walidaini wal akrabina. Your parents or your near relatives. Inna yakun ghaniyan aw fakiran fa Allahu awla bihima. If he be rich or poor, Allah is nearer to them both in compassion. فَلَا تَتَابِعُوا الْهَوَىٰ and تَعْدِيلُ. Therefore, do not follow the low desires, they transinterpret as, lest you deviate. وَإِن تَتْلُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. And if you swerve or turn aside, then surely Allah is aware of what you do. So, just like in a diagnosis treatment of physical illnesses and maladies, there are rules and procedures, prescriptions and treatments, same as we have over there, we can have for the maladies and sicknesses of the soul. So we have 3-step method discussed before: the diagnosis, the cause, and the treatment. So we have to have identification of the sickness. We have to have diagnosis. We have to have the way of the treatment must be considered. We must consider what type of treatment to prescribe. The treatment must begin with the correct medication and avoidance of the harmful things until one recovers from this illness. Also, as can be understood from what was previously mentioned, the soul has faculties that when they are imbalanced, it produces vices, either in deficiency of excess, away from the golden mean of balance, meaning virtue, or in negligence. The treatment of these illnesses is by the same method mentioned above, same method mentioned until recovered from these illnesses. So we have to diagnose the illness, prescribe the treatment, look at the causes of the illness. We must diagnose it, look at the causes, and treat it. The diseases and their treatments will firstly be divided into 4 categories. We have first the diseases of the faculty of Aqliya and their treatment, the faculty of the intellect and the treatment of them. The second is the diseases or the maladies of the faculty of Al-Ghadabiyya, of anger, and their treatments. The third are the diseases of the faculty of Shahwiyya, of desires, of appetitive desires, food, drink, sex, and their treatment. The fourth section that Mullah Naraki had in the English translation was the diseases of the mixture of any of these or all of them. So we could divide the diseases, the illnesses in Ilm al-Akhlaq into these, the Akhlaqi illnesses. Each of the faculties of Aqliya, Al-Ghadabiyya, Shahwiyya, Wahmiyya, intellect, anger, desire, appetitive desires, Imagination can either be in one of the three different states. The first is either it could be in its moderation. This is the proper balance on the scale that I've been telling you. This is called the golden mean. The second is deficiency or negligence. This is when one side leads down, it's imbalanced on the scale. This produces vice. The third is excess, extreme, that high up one. This is when one side is too high on the scale. This is vice as well. And as stated before, the areas between all these ups and downs, the most extreme and the most deficient states, and the moderation position, that golden mean position, can have various degrees and levels. So you have differing vices in between these. So you have the lowest and highest vices, the virtue in the middle, and then could have many different vices in between at differing levels, according to this kind of idea. So that is everything for this lesson. Wal akhir dawana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.